Now, we've seen many stories like this, and it begs the question, what really is the driving force for so many children falling into the snare of gender confusion? And to talk about this, we invited Don Johnson, a Catholic filmmaker, Catholic speaker, and producer of the Disconnected documentary, and he joins us now via Zoom video. Good morning to you, Mr. Johnson.
Thanks for having me.
Great, great. How are things on your end there? I know you're on the Pacific Standard Time. What part of the great Americas are you from?
I'm in Southern California, so
I
got my coffee. It's bright and early, not quite bright, but it's early.
So sorry.
So we're doing great, though.
I miss California so much. I'm going to be going there coming in December, and it's going to be a fantastic trip. But you produced this wonderful documentary. We got a chance to watch it here in the studio, called Disconnected, and it follows three different detransitioners, and they talk about all of the different things that contributed to them considering even changing their genders. Can you tell us a little bit about this project, and when did it start?
Yeah, it's sort of an ongoing thing with me. I have three daughters. I got four kids, three of which are girls, and they're all sort of in that teenage realm right now, between like 12 and 21. And so for many years, I've been sort of dealing with the toxic culture that teenage girls live in. And so my previous film called Unprotected, I got into the sexual revolution and what's causing the sexual objectification of women and why we're having problems with like having to deal with sexting, as 12-year-olds. But today it's gotten so much crazier. So as a 12-year-old, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, we're dealing with the texting thing, but then this trans issue explodes on the scene around 2015. And suddenly girls in large groups are suddenly coming out as, first they might come out as gay, then they might come out as trans or non-binary. And not only is it this huge social thing, but it is a one in which they come out as trans, but then they get pushed into this industrial complex, the trans industrial complex, where they're getting fed hormone blockers, followed by cross-sex hormones, followed by surgery as young as 13, 14, 15 years old. And these are permanently damaging things that we're doing to these girls. And so just as a father, like in my community, I'm like, what is going on? This is insane. Started to examine that a little bit. And this project grew out of that. I started to meet girls who went into it, in the big wave of 2015, and then now we see a wave coming out of it. There's a Reddit group that's over 40,000 girls strong right now of detransitioners. So it's a disaster in the culture, and I wanted to get to the bottom of it.
I definitely want to get to the trans industrial complex, as you mentioned, for sure. But first, one of the things that I found really surprising about the documentary was that it seems to be that girls really are the majority of the transitioners. How did that discovery ring in your heart when you found out?
Yeah, that's one of the big lies. It's like it's presented as this biological thing that we're sort of discovering. For centuries we've been oppressing this group, and now it's socially acceptable, and all these people are coming out as trans. But it's not everybody coming out as trans. In fact, historically, it would be people actually have gender dysphoria in a very, very small amount. Like you have discomfort with your body, like 0.03% of young boys, and then a condition in older men, which is different. Now it's all girls. And this is a brand new phenomenon in the history of the world that I thought it was another indicator for me that this is not some sort of biological condition. This is being sold to young, impressionable girls, particularly those who have other factors involved. They're autistic, they have a history of depression, they come out of trauma, these sort of things. And so the fact that it is primarily young girls is an important factor in this, and something people need to take into account. This is something that's being targeted to a particular group of particularly vulnerable kids in our society.
And sometimes we may see that self-esteem plays into this. Self-esteem. How many teenagers don't go through self-esteem issues as they are growing, as they're developing, and all of a sudden they feel that maybe they feel a certain way because they're not identifying themselves as who they are, or somebody calls them a name and they feel less. I remember when I was a teenager, I went through a whole lot of self-esteem issues where I questioned, who I was as an individual and if I was doing the right thing. How many of us question that on a daily basis? But when there's a lack of a father or a lack of a mother to guide you and take you by the hand, and then you have these woke people telling you that it might be that you're not who you are, and you need to change your sexual identity. It just puts the fire in there.
Yeah, I mean, teenage time is an era of your life when you're seeking for identity, right? I mean, it's chaos. Who doesn't go through junior high and think, I don't know who I am today? And historically, we would do some silly things when we were young, right? You go through your goth stage, or you go through whatever, and you grow out of it. That is what kids do. But now we're not giving them a chance to grow out of it. We are permanently damaging them. We're mutilating their bodies. We're increasing the trauma that they're going through these pharmaceutical and surgical and sociological processes that we're pushing them into.
We have about 2 minutes before we have to go to break. But, one thing that I hear all the time, I go to college campuses and I do pamphleting against transgender ideology. And one argument, the only real argument I ever get is, you're killing people. You are murdering these children. And I had someone just on Tuesday, I was at U of H campus, University of Houston campus, and this older lady came up to me and said, I almost killed myself because of Christians, because of y'all's teachings. How do you respond to such vitriol?
Well, it's just, you got to respond with facts. I mean, the fact is that pushing them into the trans-industrial complex increases suicide rates, that it is emotional blackmail. It is in counseling, we tell people how to not use emotional blackmail to get something. When people come into a counselor's office and say, if you don't give me this, I'm going to kill myself, they change that, right? They teach you how to accurately and properly present your needs. Now we're doing it the other way. It's the counselors that are doing this emotional blackmail, where we are telling people, oh, you're going to kill yourself if you don't do this. They're telling the parents, the kids are going to kill themselves if they don't do this. Absolute lie. You look at the actual data, suicide rates go up. If you look at the proper data, the data like from Sweden and Europe, the U.S. has very poor data on this, frankly. But the truth is, suicide rates go up for transitioners. It doesn't help anything.
Don, in the few seconds here we have before the break, where can people watch this documentary?
You can go to donjohnsonmedia.com. That will give you all the links. So you can order a live stream from my movie site, runawayplanet.com. You can pre-order a DVD, which will be available from Ignatius Press here within days.
Very nice.
But the one-stop shop might be to go to donjohnsonmedia.com, and it'll provide you all the links, the places to go to watch it.
Find that documentary on, I believe that was donjohnson.com, Don?
donjohnsonmedia.com or runawayplanet.com will get you to the site as well.
Excellent. So right before the break, we tease this in military, and it's not military. Sometimes it feels like that, but this industrial complex that is bombarding parents, right? And oftentimes, it's just getting rid of the parent altogether and telling the kids that this is the way that you have to go. You are actually not the gender that you are. If you're confused, if you're feeling down on yourself, maybe you're actually, if you're a girl, you're a boy. If you're a boy, you're a girl. Can you talk a little bit about this this complex that we mentioned at the beginning of the interview?
Yeah, it's important to understand for parents and everyone listening that this is not some sort of grassroots movement where a bunch of kids are suddenly discovering their real selves, and, oh, I was born in the wrong body. This is a top-down movement that's making a lot of money. This is big pharmaceutical companies. This is big government organizations. This is the educational industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, the counseling industry. They are all have been overtaken overtaken by heavily funded ideologues who are pushing this on kids. And so in the same way that pharmaceutical companies realized in the 1960s that they could make a ton of money from giving healthy people drugs with things like the birth control pill, that's exactly what's going on today. I mean, if you, in the past, you had to actually wait for somebody to get sick before you could treat them. Now, the medical industry actually takes healthy people, prepubescent kids who are perfectly healthy, makes them sick, puts them on this track, so that in many states you actually have to put kids on this track. If they come in and they say, hey, I think maybe I'm trans, immediately the counseling and medical industries put them on this track where they're getting, again, like I said, puberty blockers. This is the way it goes. Puberty blockers followed by cross-sex hormones, followed by surgery. And this is a lifetime of medicalization now. They lie to the kids and say, oh, we're just going to pause it. This is all reversible. And kids are just ignorant about this. I saw a thread the other day where a young girl who had had a double mastectomy was like, when do my boobs grow back? Okay, they're just completely ignorant about what's going on here. And so they're making a ton of money. And these ideologues, frankly, a bunch of very rich, as I explained in the movie, a bunch of very rich people who are hoping to implement transhumanism in the world is how this works. They're hoping to live forever by defeating our natural bodies. They are making a ton of money off of this, and kids are getting sucked into this. So it's not, like parents, I'm sure it feels to parents like everyone is against you. That is the case, actually. Yeah. The teachers are against you, the doctors, and I mean, not all, of course. Obviously, there's good teachers and good doctors, but the industries themselves, that's important to understand. The industries themselves have been overtaken, so that if you want to provide traditional counseling, like good therapy, where we talk cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, you can't do that in California right now.
Yeah.
It's illegal for a therapist to provide a kid who thinks, I don't know, maybe I'm trans. That's all you have to do. You have to just suggest it. It's illegal for the counselor now to do what we would traditionally do and help this kid out of their trauma. So that's what we need to realize. It's a top-down, very evil movement in society that we need to defend ourselves and fight back against.
Yeah, a recent example was the Children's Hospital in Nashville that, it turns out that out of a leak, that they were talking about how lucrative these surgeries were. And just like, I think it was just one aspect of the surgery was bringing in thousands and thousands of dollars. And that was only just one part of the whole transition phase. So it's really crazy. But let's fact check here. Let's separate fact from fiction. Is it true that these puberty blockers, is it true that they just pause? Because for me, it's hard to believe that you can put a pause on a natural process like puberty and then come back to it 10 years, 15 years later when you change your mind about it. Because let's be honest, when you're a kid, you have no idea what you're doing. You probably don't have any idea what you're doing or who you're about until you're probably 25 or 30. Let's be honest. Like, can you actually pause that?
There's a reason we don't let kids vote or drink or buy cigarettes, right? Or get tattoos. I mean, the permanent damage. No, you cannot pause puberty. These are chemical castration drugs that we are giving to kids that have actually been outlawed. We used to give them to sex offenders, but they were outlawed because the side effects were so severe. You sometimes give them to women, but then only for a short time, if there's some sort of issue that they have, like a cancerous issue. Yeah, we're giving them to kids. These have never been approved by the FDA for any of this. This is all off-label use of these drugs. So no, you can't reverse it. Not only can you not reverse it, you are almost immediately doing irreparable harm to your body and the rest of you when you go on these synthetic hormones. That's just a fact. You've got people now. You're generally sterilized if you go on them long enough. You can't have sexual satisfaction many times. Your genitals are deformed and useless after a short amount of time. No, these are very, very dangerous drugs that should not be anywhere near kids. I mean, they shouldn't be near anyone, frankly, but certainly shouldn't be near kids.
Don, it was really interesting. I was watching the documentary, and the DSM. You mentioned that or you didn't mention, but in the documentary, it mentioned that the DSM still categorizes transgenderism as a mental illness. Yet at the same time, the culture is saying it's not a pathology. They're born this way. This is natural. Could you explain this relationship between the DSM and everyone and the culture saying it's not a pathology?
Yeah, I mean, it is a psychological condition. We've always known that. It's like anorexia. You show up at the doctor and say that, hey, I think I'm fat. The doctor's not going to say, if you are in fact thin, he's not going to say, hey, let's do some liposuction and fix your body to match your mind. Yet with transgenderism, I use that term in quotes, we know it's a psychological condition, but we had to depathologize it somehow for cultural acceptance. So they changed the name of it to gender dysphoria, but they still wanted to charge insurance companies. People still want to make money off of this. If it's just a natural condition, why do we need to go to the doctor and all this stuff? Like, why are we doing surgeries on this? If it's just a naturally occurring condition in the world. It isn't. It's obviously a psychological condition, but they had to confuse everybody by changing the name and so they can keep charging. So it's like Dr. Lappert in the film does this a nice explanation of this. They want to keep charging insurance companies, but they don't want it to sound like a pathology. So they change the name, and now they call it gender dysphoria. And now even they're changing the name. That still sounds too bad. The latest DSM, I think, has changed it to some sort of gender identity thing. But realize that this is all smokescreen. Everybody understands that it's a psychological condition, but they want to make money off of it and treat it without calling it a pathology. And so we really need to think more clearly about this.
Don, is there any way that we could turn this around? It's just so at this point it's so saturated, right? We're fighting uphill basically with all of these different organizations, from schools to hospitals to the therapists. The kids are exposed to all of these different ideologies from social media. What can we do to turn this around, to turn the tide?
Well, I think first you got to properly understand what the issue is, and that's why I hope people watch the movie, because we do get into like the philosophical, spiritual, intellectual issues behind it. Like this is a battle for what it means to be a human being. Understanding that and what kind of war it is the first step, and then we have to be able to stand up and be vocal about this. There are groups, wide variety of groups that are coming, but it's very hard to find support because people don't want to, I don't want to share, I don't want to stand up, even posting something on Facebook. No, I think I have a trans friend and that would be offensive. Listen, this is doing irreparable harm. This is an anti-human, anti-person. I'll call it satanic. I don't pull back.
Yeah,
this is an evil satanic movement that is destroying families, destroying people, separating parents from their kids, destroying kids. We have to have the courage to stand up, even in our own little small social group, and say enough. This is wrong. I'm not going to let this continue. So even like you will find if somebody just stands up, it's like any movement in history. You just need a few people to stand up and say, because there's a lot of people thinking it, but they're scared.
It's
interesting.
Scared.
They don't want to be.
That's exactly true. When I was at U of H on Tuesday, we had a couple of people who were employees at U of H come up to us and was like, "Oh, thank you so much for being out here." And we handed them a flyer of 10 reasons why transgenderism is harmful to the family. And he takes a picture of it. He goes, "Can I just take a picture of this? I can't be seen carrying this around." And there are people kept on coming up to us saying, "Hey, I'm supportive, but I can't take a flyer because I'm scared that people are going to retaliate against me." So many people are afraid of this movement. It's incredibly tyrannical. But yes, like you're saying, there's so many people, the vast majority of people support this movement, and they are against the transgender movement. They support being against the transgender movement. They're just afraid because the culture silos people, which is why I think this documentary is so important. We have about a minute and a half left in our conversation, about 2 minutes left in our conversation. Don Johnson, who is the target audience for your documentary? What are you trying to get out? What is this message? And how can people connect with you?
Yeah, first and foremost, parents. I know parents are feeling overwhelmed. Pastors are feeling overwhelmed by this. They don't know. Everyone. I would say everyone. Every filmmaker says that, but actually, we showed it to junior hires. We showed it to, I had a bunch of high school kids watch it the other day. They were all transfixed. They're all entertained too, frankly. It's an emotional film.
Yeah.
It tells a story. You meet a girl named Daisy, and you will be crying by the end of this movie, for joy and pain. Okay. So everybody needs to watch it, particularly parents and those in some sort of leadership position. But listen, be confident. Reach out to me. There's a lot of groups rising up. DonJohnsonMedia.com. Send me an email. We will send you some resources. Go to Advocates Protecting Children. But you're absolutely right. Don't be afraid of this. This is a top-down thing. There's very few people that actually believe this stuff. Okay. There is a lot of people sucked into the trans-industrial complex that want to keep their jobs, want to keep, don't want to get offended by, or don't want to offend anybody. But this is evil. It's tyrannical. You're exactly right. That's the right word. It's tyrannical. It's top down. But the kids their lives are being destroyed. When we look back on this, and hopefully very few years, but certainly like in 50 years, we're going to look back on this like we looked at lobotomies. Yeah. We're going to be, so what the heck were we doing right there? This was insanity. We're living in an insane time, and we have to stand up, show people the movie, buy a gift, buy the movie for a friend, send it to them, send them the link. Because we got to get the word out on this.
Amen, brother. Thank you so much for getting up early, Pacific Standard Time, joining us on Catholic Drive Time. And make sure to check out DonJohnsonMedia.com to check out that Disconnected documentary and stay in touch with Don. Thank you so much, Don, and God bless you and Mary keep you. Don't go away. After this short network break, we're going to have the scriptures for this weekend. And what do they mean? It's going to be on Catholic Drive Time in just a few minutes. Thank you.